Alright, now let's understand Venus coming to the 7th house of your birth chart. Now, this is a strong position for Venus, of course, because Venus is feeling extremely comfortable because the 7th house is a natural house for Libra, which is standing for relationships, and this is what exactly Venus represents. So, of course, Venus will crave relationships in a very beautiful fashion. But contrary to the expectation that people with Venus in 7th house desire relationships, the reality is that people around them desire relationship with them, but it is not necessarily true for a person with Venus in 7th house that they themselves would approach other people. They are extremely helpful by nature. This is a very beautiful characteristic when Venus comes into the 7th house, because these people are extremely good Samaritans. They would go out of way to help out correct set of people, and Venus understands and differentiates between people where it feels that it is being biased to somebody. It would take a step back. Venus understands who needs to value when it is coming to the 7th house. So this person will not help everybody. This person will automatically reserve themselves for the deserve. So unlike a Venus in 6th house, which kind of goes out of comfort zone, does not form boundaries, you can expect all of that to disappear when Venus comes into the 7th house. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Things can drastically change, of course, if we have Saturn somehow linked to this Venus. But honestly, even with Saturn linking over here, it still remains correct in terms of valuing the right set of people. One thing which is very prevalent over here is the fact that Venus is able to grant the power to the person to be able to identify correct set of relationships and also network very correctly. So a 7th house Venus, contrary to the expectations that these people would drive life all about relationship, actually drives more into business. You will see that these people will get somehow frustrated with their jobs, even with their 10th house and a 6th house placement accompanying them. A 7th house Venus person is likely to have either a side gig as a passion, or they are likely to convert it into a full-time fledged, you can say, monetized source of income for themselves. More importantly, sometimes circumstantially they see backlashes in their service or job as well. And it is even more true if Mercury somehow gets linked to this Venus in the 7th house. Then these people really desire self-employment. They really don't want to depend on others for generating money, and they are very nicely materialistically driven and motivated also. The most beautiful thing about a Venus in 7th house is how realistic these people are. They are going to help only the ones who deserve it. They are going to expand business not by becoming greedy. Unlike a Venus in 2nd house or 3rd house, which will be driven more towards materialistic needs by greed slightly, a 7th house Venus is very stable. They know when it is important to stop. This is also a good placement for investing into stock markets, because honestly, the person knows when I need to give up. And this is something which is very important from a speculation point of view. 7th house, apart from relationships, business acumen and your business partners, also really stands for your overall success. So when the fortune is in your favor, you can say, but when Venus comes to the 7th house, you will see that somehow your work actually gets expedited. Somehow things work out ultimately for you, and you feel super blessed about it. You feel in deep acknowledgement about it. You are constantly grounded by your network. That means you intentionally seek people who are slightly smarter than you when Venus comes to the 7th house. This is again very beautiful. The reason they are able to rise up in life in such a vivid fashion is simply because such people know what to speak when, and they know how to create a boundary in order to impress somebody. They know how to win somebody. They know what it means to convince somebody, and they will never fake it to make it. That is also something exclusive to them. A 7th house Venus is always extremely grounded, realistic. That doesn't mean they are pessimistic. They are just not overly idealistic. They know what they need to do. And the best part about them is that they are okay being average also. Now, some of you might say that how is this beneficial if they are not reaching their potential? Mind it. They surpass potential and they set an example for others to follow. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share, and subscribe. It means quite a lot. But the ideal idea over here is that an average person in today's time period is actually more happy in life because they don't attach unnecessary expectation. They don't set visions like they want to become a millionaire. They set visions which are realistic, such as I want to make my business successful. And then eventually it might translate into making them a millionaire as a byproduct. That depends on other placements also. But this very idea that they are super realistic about what to approach in a correct fashion is something that I would say sets apart Venus in the seventh house. And this is very much not talked about. Everybody will talk about relationships regarding Venus in the seventh house, but this is the actual beautiful part about it. Now use this sutra which I told you as an essence to understand now how they approach relationships. You would see that such people will never have very high expectations from their business partner or even from spouse. They would be self-made. They would instill responsibility upon themselves to make things function. They will not play blame game unnecessarily. They will take accountability of what has actually worked for them and what actually failed for them. And that is something very, again, beautiful about Venus in the seventh house. And this transparency is what honestly attracts other people to come into relationships with them. Always remember that the seventh house Venus is aspecting the first house. So it is going to grant you with a very beautiful personality, and you will be very self-conscious about your physical appearances as well. You will be a person who will not like to overindulge into anything, be it food, be it people, be it even addictions. All of these things you like to keep in a controlled check. Unless Jupiter gets associated somehow with Venus, or the Venus is being driven by Sagittarius, or even if it is exalted in the seventh house, in that case, sometimes you would see that you love to overindulge. You love to, become prone to addictions, and sometimes you gain a huge amount of weight also pretty easily. You put on a lot of obesity with a lot of ease. So this is how, Venus really operates in the seventh house. It makes you not a people pleaser, but a people lover. This is something which I use as a sutra to fundamentally differentiate between Venus in the seventh house and Jupiter in the seventh house. When Venus comes into the seventh house, it will make sure that it does a vibe check. It will make sure that evaluates the impressions of the people surrounding them. They would evaluate their environment very carefully, and they would select the correct set of people. And some people might, say that they are being too choosy, or they are being too picky and selective about their connections and even their normal way of approach to life. But honestly, this is what makes them very practical and logical in approaching life as a whole. So this is what Venus can do strongly in the seventh house. Sometimes people will call you that you become very much of a person who is, using and throwing people around. But honestly, you have this idea when Venus comes to the seventh house that you don't want to explain yourself to others. You are okay moving on from people as long as it seems as a practical decision. You don't get way too attached to somebody. For you, getting attached to somebody also means at the back of your mind that it would mean that tomorrow, if that person betrays you, you will feel disappointment. So you don't attach expectations to somebody to that level that you will feel disappointed later. So if tomorrow somebody actually does not do something favorable for you, you don't feel bad about it because you never had any expectations associated with them in the first place. And that is why I said Venus in seventh house is very sorted in how it really manages to approach not just people but view life as a whole, as a perception. Another wonderful fact for Venus in the seventh house is that when these people worship Mahalakshmi, when these people are, driven towards aesthetics, when they appreciate art forms, when they understand the value of resources, when they learn to value their money, no matter how less or big it becomes, that is when they actually reach the pinnacle potential of this placement. Because overall, this placement is supposed to grant you with a physical aura that other people will follow. You are not here to copy others. That would be somebody who is having a Venus in 5th house, or let's say even 11th house to a certain extent, not fully. You are here to be a trendsetter. Always remember that. You will be frustrated by the fact that people will copy you. No matter how small of a change or a trend you are setting, it could be as small as being the kid in school who selected a particular school bag or a pencil box, and everybody started copying that and started bringing that only. They also went ahead and bought it. You could be the person who has a very good style statement, so everybody started copying your fashion sense. You could be a person who has a very vivid skin routine, so everybody is coming to you asking for advice and then started copying you again. So whenever I see a Venus in 7th house, one small suggestion which goes kind of against their natural instinct or nature, you can say, is that you should have an active social media presence. Even though you actually hate it, I agree with you. You want to keep boundaries, you don't want to inform a lot of people. But when you have an active social media presence, at least you get a silver lining over there. You get that due recognition and fame which you deserve, which otherwise people are simply copying you and using your trend setting natures for pleasing themselves. So in that fashion, you can actually make that your profession. I won't say, because again, you need 5th house, 6th house, and 10th house, or even 11th house to support it. But definitely something of a passion for you. Because at the end of the day, you are a person who wants to be non-confrontational, who does not want to indulge into a lot of heavy conflicts with people. You simply want to make sure that your presence is known in the room. Your presence is known in the world. And that is what social media does grant you to a certain extent, provided you learn how to make boundaries over there in a very beautiful fashion. So that's how I would sum up Venus in the 7th house. And definitely this is one of the most wonderful placements for Venus to be in an astrology demon chart. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Now let's come to Venus in the 8th house. Now in 8th house, Venus is again actually a hidden placement that is again very underrated. A lot of people might feel that this Venus kind of gets darker compared to other people around, which is true. This Venus is here to make sure that you make people around you vulnerable. Yes, you heard that right. This Venus grants you with a very powerful intuition. It also grants you with the ability to seamlessly learn things that are not usually accepted by society. It also is a very good placement to acquire knowledge that is hidden. It is also an extremely good placement to research in a lot of depth. It's an excellent placement to be able to study human behavior, body language, psychology, if the 6th house also supports it apart from this 8th house placement. And on top of that, some of you folks who are watching this video, I am pretty sure you also are very well versed in astrology as well, if Venus is in the 8th house. You are here to understand that there are a lot of people who are not as sorted as you. So you take a moral burden upon yourself to go ahead and not heal them. Keep this in mind. That would be a very Venus in 6th house placement. You just are curious enough to decode them. You are just curious enough to make them vulnerable enough to be able to understand what is going through their minds. You are an empath when Venus comes to the 8th house. No matter, even if you have very darker fantasies regarding physical pleasures, or no matter even if you project yourself as a person who is very downright rude and does not care about the world. The reality is that deep within, a Venus in the 8th house person is going to be very sensitive, and they know how to step into the shoes of others in order to understand pain, happiness, both alike in a very vivid fashion. So summing it up, you can say that Venus in the 8th house is here to understand people, is here to learn to be a Dharya Lakshmi. In short, Dharya Lakshmi means that you learn to be very patient. You deal with a lot of people, you deal with so many fights and conflicts on a daily basis when Venus comes to the 8th house, and sometimes you also end up earning a lot of money from this. I have seen Venus in the 8th house always indulging into roles intentionally, or sometimes I would say that even against their own choice. They end up circumstantially in a role where they are supposed to solve conflict between different teams. They end up in a role where they have to do a lot of stakeholder management. They end up in a role where, they are not supposed to be an executor, but rather are supposed to be the influencer, the person who would connect different teams. Now, on a technical side, you would see that such people might be, product managers. That is one role that requires this. On the non-technical side, these people could be very good human resources. They know exactly how to negotiate. They know exactly what the other person is thinking about. They know exactly what to say so that the other person is convinced. And sometimes they also intentionally use this placement to con other people. So if you see human resources work in general, right, it would be to negotiate with people and make sure that they are not getting the salary which they actually deserve also. So to a certain extent, Venus in the 8th house does grant that power too. More importantly, the most interesting part about this Venus in 8th house is that it has two different auras which it projects in the society. It projects in the society whatever it is convenient for the society to watch. So if people around them are being extroverted, they would emulate that extroversion and behave as if they can easily integrate into that environment. But innately deep within, they would be highly introverted. Nobody can second guess what their actual intention is. Nobody can second guess what their true personality is like. And it's very difficult for a person to open up to somebody when Venus comes to the 8th house. So you would see that these people usually struggle with not relationships because they are able to easily impress people by emulating their behavior. They understand what the other's expectation is from them, but it's very difficult for them to end up with the right person who knows and decodes their true personality side, and they very patiently wait for it. And one of the very deep ways, or you can say that something dark about this placement, is that these people would indulge into physical pleasures not simply to enjoy it, but also to decode the other person. They would defend their actions by saying that they are indulging into amorous activities in order to understand the other person better. Because for them, it is not only a physical pleasure. For them, it is also about seeing or witnessing how the other person reacts when they are most vulnerable. So that is how things really progress with Venus in 8th house. Also, they would have a very high libido because at the end of the day, Venus also represents fertility, right? Shukranu, which we say, semen, literal translation of that. So you would see that this person with Venus in the 8th house has a very high libido, and therefore they are also extremely spiritual because they have a very high amount of root chakra, to be very frank, which is difficult to control. Many a times, if they are not able to channelize this well, they are very prone to depressive tendencies also, because they are concealing their emotions. They are not able to explain it to others how they are feeling inside, and honestly they are okay being misunderstood also. This is also a negative or positive, whatever you want to say, that this is a double-edged sword of a thing, that they are okay being misunderstood by other people. People will second guess their intention. People would put some blames on them, and they take those blames also. They don't even complain about it. They are kind of okay with that. Sometimes they, get very badly gaslighted and still they don't react. Because as I said, right, they are people with a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance. Now, God forbid, if this Venus is being driven by Mars or is linked to Mars, in that case, the tolerance level has a limit. And as soon as a boiling point is reached for that person, they will, throw out all the emotions all at once. Especially also holds true if Venus is being driven by a water sign to a certain extent, not entirely. I would still advocate towards Mars more, but that is how things really are. They would conceal all their emotions, bottle it up, and then once the boiling point is reached, a volcano is outbursted, and the other people around them who were expecting them to stay quiet, stay calm, who had a very different perception about them, finally gets to witness that there is a different side to them. There is a lot of anger which is adjusted over there. More importantly, such people who have Venus in the 8th house will also advocate this fact that sometimes healing is about feeling angry. This might sound very, contradictory to a lot of people, but for people who are having this placement, Sometimes they feel anger inside, deep within, and that anger reminds them of the mistakes that they have committed, whether it could be about putting energy into an incorrect direction at work, or putting a lot of initiative towards a toxic relationship, or anything in general I am talking about which induced trauma to them. And then they accept that anger, and then they tell or remind themselves that I will never want me to feel this anger ever again. So they inculcate a behavioral change within them, that yeah, now I will never do a similar action because I experienced something bad because of so and so reason. So I will make sure that I don't repeat this with somebody else. That is the first learning experience that they take out of it. And the second thing is that they remind themselves that I don't want to feel such anger ever again. So I need to move on. It's okay being misunderstood by that person or by that situation, and I will rectify it. And then they heal from that. So this is how their life is very transformative. If somehow Saturn gets linked to this 8th house, either via an aspect or by nakshatra or by disposition or a direct conjunction sometimes, in that case scenario, things really drastically change. There would be complaints from such folks that, we are putting it so much effort into a single direction and everything gets wiped out after every 2 to 2.5 years. It's like we have to start our lives from scratch all over again. And then they keep on persevering that. But the most beautiful part about this is that it will never harm them financially. Yes, even though a lot of you would say that it would be about gains and losses to extremes, but honestly, Venus in 8th house are very realistic about accumulating finances. They get very good benefits even from their in-laws in general. Their money multiplication is higher post marriage, also post relationship as well. And they know exactly how to speculate in a very beautiful fashion. They never overshoot things. They never take overly high risks. Unless, of course, Mars is again linked over here, then things again drastically change. So what I'm talking about is a generic placement that Venus is unhindered, unaspected, and sitting in 8th house, pristine way. More importantly, such people should really indulge themselves into some hobby or other. Because the moment you do not keep yourself occupied, your mind goes into questioning self-worth very often. You feel anxious, and the moment you feel anxious, you are not somebody who can explain their feelings so vividly to others. And you are not ready to open up also, right? So why give your time to something negative that can later on impact you and cause you to, go into a state of mind that makes you feel bad about yourself? So never ever remain unoccupied for very long. Always try to keep yourself busy. This is a very, very practical suggestion, but again, it's very easier said than done when Venus comes into the 8th house. So that's all about it. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Alright, now let's talk about Venus in the 9th house. This is a very mixed placement, to be very frank with all of you. A lot of people will see that there is a very high inclination towards spirituality because of this placement, which is true. That also happens. You will get a lot of resources from your father also. But the reality is Venus does not exactly feel very comfortable to be in the 9th house, no matter what you sugarcoat it or whoever you listen others to. The idea is that the 9th house represents elders. And more importantly, it also represents Guru, the people who teach you. Now, Venus is not fully comfortable with the Karakatvas of this house. So you would observe that when Venus comes to the 9th house, somehow if Sun also gets linked or Jupiter also gets linked, then definitely you will have a lot of daddy issues. You will have a lot of problems with your father. Your father will provide you with a lot of resources. You are going to inherit a lot of money from them. You are going to even make very good properties out of your father's help in life. But in general, you are going to have very active disagreements with them. You don't want to follow the way they followed their life. It is also possible, if Sun is directly linked with the 9th house along with the Venus, that your father already has an established business setup and you are not ready to pick over that or, continue that as an inheritance in one way or other. But more importantly, many a times when Venus is in ninth house, even if not directly linked with all of this, you will see that the person prefers to move away from their homeland or their hometown, whether it is for education, whether it is for career. But to be honest, it is out of desperation to get out of it. You just don't feel quiet vibe at your home place, no matter how you put it. It's a different thing that you start missing your home and you feel homesick about your home after you take a separation from it out of practical reasons. But then again, this ninth house Venus keeps on reminding you that you will have very active disagreements with your father, which you hate to confront. Because at the end of the day, Venus in ninth house is not something that really wants to confront with people and take conflict. It is a placement that wants to be advisor for others. So also I have seen when Venus comes to the ninth house, you are going to be that person who is not directly seen as a guru, but everybody is still going to come to you to seek knowledge. A very classic example of a person I would give would be the person who sits in class or who never attends class, but is the person who actually imparts education inside of a hostel and is teaching to everybody one day before exam, or is the person whose notes and assignments are being copied by others, but that person themselves will not be attending class. You will observe this, that Venus in the ninth house people usually have low attendances in institutions also. This is a very fun fact about ninth house Venus, but they are extremely street smart about it. Now, because it is Venus, it knows how to convince teachers, elders, authorities to be in their favor. No matter even if they disagree with them, such people have very good relationship with everybody who is, higher authority. They would never do something that will irritate their relationship or their status quo with their fathers. They will never do something that will make their teachers complain about them. They will never indulge into something that will tarnish their image as an advisor. They will never do something that other people might look down upon. They are very morally sound folks. But at the same time, Venus in the ninth house has its aspect on the third house. So these people take a sadistic pleasure in seeing some people who are not putting due efforts to achieve something. This is also quite true. For example, if somebody is already blessed with properties, if somebody is already blessed with a lot of inheritance, or somebody is doing something which they already possess and they never worked their way out of it, or somebody is nepotistic, in that case, this Venus in ninth house person will look down upon them. It will demean them. It will not accept the fact that those people are successful. It's very difficult for them to relate to somebody who has not put in effort in life. And mind it, even though they are blessed with resources, you might say that this sounds hypocritical of them because they also already are in possession of such resources, like I mentioned earlier, right? But the truth is that they still go ahead and do something that dignifies them and makes them set apart from their family. And the reason they do this is because they feel very overshadowed or foreshadowed by their family and their lineage, or even their fathers. Just to please their father or to prove their father wrong or to prove a point to everybody, they will make something of themselves out of it. They will make a wonderful career, or they will earn money quite a lot, or they will become that next influencer. Something or other they will definitely do or achieve in their life that proves their point and proves to others that yes, they are very sorted and sane. So this is something which is exclusively very beautiful about Venus coming to the ninth house. More importantly, you will also see that such people usually obtain their higher education faster than others. And it could be a person who either went directly for a master's degree or a higher education degree post their bachelor's, or it could be a person who didn't get employed also post their bachelor's degree or post their initial education which they were expecting. They feel frustrated about it, that initially I am not getting things manifested as much as others. They feel jealous also about this because of the aspect to the third house. If they see that there are other people who did equal amount of efforts or who put more efforts, but they got lucky and these people couldn't get as lucky as them, in that case scenario, it is very much possible that ninth house Venus person will feel jealous. But they will always take jealousy as a healthy competition. These are not the set of people who would feel sad seeing somebody's success. They would be happy for you, but they would set you as an example to follow and then use you like a reinforcement to eventually surpass you also. So that is something exclusively beautiful to Venus in the ninth house. That is how realistic they are. That is how their sense of justice is very elevated. Another wonderful thing about Venus in ninth house is regarding their relationships, especially if Jupiter somehow gets connected here as well. These people have a habit of treating their friends equally as important or putting same amount of emphasis as they would put on their spouse or partner or even somebody in relationship with. A lot of times you will see that the person who is in a relationship with a Venus in ninth house person will complain that why are you spending equal amount of time with me and your best friends? You are supposed to be biased towards me. The ninth house Venus person could not relate. The ninth house Venus person will always advocate that both of you are special in your own ways and I do not indulge into comparing apple and oranges for you. And they would take a stand for their friends. So that is also something very beautiful. If you have a person who is having ninth house Venus is in your life and is a very close friend, then you should feel very blessed about it, because he or she will definitely unlock a lot of beautiful destiny for you. You will see that these people are perfect travel partners also, especially because they are spiritually oriented also or inclined very nicely. No matter the religion, it doesn't matter. They would take you and make you identifiable with stories that was completely unknown to everybody else. They would be able to explain a very new side of spirituality altogether that nobody else could explain it to you. And they are perfect travel partners because they would compromise their own comfort to make sure that you are also accommodated. Even the Venus over here hates fathers or does not come into agreement with their father, but honestly they take over their fathers. That means they are very fatherly to the people they actually love very nicely. And they are very overprotective also about their close and loved ones. But they are very selective about this. That is why if you are having somebody who is your friend, who is a close friend, who is having Venus in ninth house, then you should feel very blessed about it, because usually such people move on from connections very seamlessly and their life is all about movement, right? So anybody who has taken even a small initiative to remain in touch with this person, they will get 200x the returns back. That is also something very beautiful about Venus in ninth house person, that they would reciprocate a multiplied response compared to your small initiatives. You will get 100x of the returns of the time which you have invested in such people. And they are very dignified also. Keep that in mind. So that is how Venus really outplays other people, you can say, when it comes to the ninth house. More importantly, such people also should definitely incline towards worshipping Devi, any form of it, because they very closely correlate with that. Because they are extremely sacrificing, accommodating towards the other person, are, biased slightly towards the people who they love exclusively. They do not, indulge into anything which might be called as injustice. So all of this reciprocates back to Devi very strongly. And therefore, they also get very strong manifestations when they worship Devi. And worshipping Devi does not only mean to do a spiritual worship of her, but also imbibing those qualities within themselves. Many a times I have seen this habit when Venus is in the ninth house. This is something of a negative trait, that they are not able to control their communication. And trust me, these people are very intimidating when they are communicating to others. So they should learn to control their words. They should not speak something that eventually, is harmful for other person or that might offend the other person. In that case, they fail to realize the pinnacle potential of the ninth house placement for Venus. They are hindering their Venus that way. So they should never indulge into that. They should really keep calm. They should make a very pleasant aura, and most importantly, they should give gyan, or they should spread knowledge only to people who have asked for it. They should not voluntarily go and give knowledge to anybody. In that case, they are not doing themselves a favor. They are causing their connections to actually drift away from them. And honestly, this might sound selfish when I'm giving that as an advice, but ask any Venus in ninth house person. This holds extremely true for them. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share, and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Now let's understand what exactly happens when Venus will come to your 10th house of the birth chart. Now it becomes a very interesting placement. A lot of you might think that Venus coming to the 10th house indicates that the person might become a celebrity, the person might select acting or anything related to creative arts as their profession. But the interesting side of this entire story is that most of them do not. But there is one very beautiful acute thing which is characterizing of Venus in the 10th house, and that is that they would always select a profession, but they would be somewhat of an outlier within that. You would always see these are the set of people who have very out of the box ideas. Let's say that Venus is being disposited in a mercurial sign like Gemini, or let's say Venus is debilitated in Virgo also. These people would enter the banking sector. These people would, start something related to finance as they're working initially under service of somebody else, because their luck or fortune is always unlocked when they are providing service to somebody else in a job setting initially. Why? Because always remember that the 6th house is 9 houses away from here. So the way to decode their luck is when they start providing service to somebody else initially. And later, because these people become so excellent at what they do, because these people feel very passionate about what they are actually doing, they make very meaningful contributions in their service tenure, and eventually you will see that such a person will start consulting other people in their personal space. These could be set of people who initially started their chartered accountancy practice and then transitioned from a big organization after serving years over there to open their own consultancy, where all the clients who used to be a part of their service, who have already benefited from them earlier stage in their earlier stages of career, will now come to them post they have taken a sabbatical or a retirement from that big corporate. These are the set of people who would have very intricate, detail oriented styles of evaluating other things. These are the set of people who would, no matter what profession, will always emphasize a lot on design, on architectures, on understanding what nitty gritty needs to be checked. And they exactly know intuitively what that other person is looking out for. These are the set of people who have a very, very good first impression on others. Let's say that Venus is being disposited by Saturn over here, or Saturn somehow gets linked. These people unlock their destiny, their karma, by providing free service to others. You will see that these people are going and contributing towards NGOs. They are volunteering for the benefit of society a lot. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share, and subscribe. It means quite a lot. You will also see that these people, contrary to the assumption that the 10th house Venus would actually have a wonderful relationship, but honestly, their eventual relationship is their work. Because you will notice that the 7th house is 10 houses away from the 10th house when Venus comes into the 10th. So they have not much interest or inclination towards relationships all that much initially in life. In fact, they struggle quite a lot regarding that. But you would usually see that such people should network a lot, and they actually become very excellent networkers later on. They would be going to different conferences to present their ideas. They would be extensively traveling for the sake of their work. And in all these travels, they will find their spouse, or they will find somebody who understands them, who really values their urge or ambition quite extensively. A 10th house Venus may not have the luxurious aura of a 4th house Venus, but nevertheless, because the Venus sitting in the 10th house is aspecting the 4th house, these people make very, very beautiful aesthetic home for themselves. And the most beautiful part about this is that it would be having a minimalistic beauty. Unlike a Venus in 4th house, which is all about refined sense of luxury and bringing, elegance in sort of a comfort oriented zone, a 10th house Venus is more of bringing minimalistic to aesthetics, connecting the dots between them. So these people will have a very small home, but what you call it, it would be still very cozy. When somebody enters their house, they would feel very energized. When somebody enters their house, they are entering their private life. These people hate bringing others to their home because that's a very private space to them. They don't want others to peek into that. They have a very strong opinion about different areas of life and they love to express it very vividly. A Venus in 10th house is extremely seasoned at gossiping also within workplace. Now this gossiping need not be seen as negative. Rather, you would see that these are the set of people who advocate that fact that politics exists in every workplace. So whether you are involved directly or indirectly, you would still be involved. So they actively go ahead and involve themselves into that. And they hate the fact that somebody else might backbitch about them behind their backs, and that is why they love to confront people on the face. They like to throw truth bombs. And this is only true to the extent that this is constricted, or you can say restrained to their workplace. When it comes to personal life, they get super emotional about it. They get super sensitive about it. And you would see that these are the set of people who have three completely different personalities. The person who steps out of home is completely different personality. The person who steps into the office is completely again a different personality. And the person who comes to meet their personal friends is also a different person altogether. And these three people are actually the same personality and the same person, but you cannot even identify by looking at them because they look so different. That is the beautiful part about Venus in 10th house. It imparts a versatility to them to be able to interact with so many people, to be able to change themselves in order to maintain their magnetism, you can say, when it comes to interactions, when it comes to showing what things they are passionate about, and when it comes to even speaking, they have excellent oratory skills compared to others. They usually don't like to talk all that much. They like to work very silently. They like to emphasize on small details. They like to be very realistic about things. They like to be people who are very out of the box in terms of thinking. You can say that these people have a very design oriented architecture of their brain, and they like to literally physically manifest that around them. For example, let's say, again, let's take an example of, let's say Venus gets connected to Mars over here somehow. Such a person might end up becoming an excellent engineer. But after becoming an engineer, this person will not stop over there. This person will have very peculiar solutions about approaching different problems. This person will not tell that you should go the traditional path of only doing data structures and algorithms. This person will go a completely different path and probably discover something new. And they will also emphasize a lot on research. Such people really gain a lot from their research. So these people will intersect their career in such a way that they are doing a job, but they are doing a research for some company. It could be applied scientists also. So this is the power of Venus in 10th house in general. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Now, one very interesting thing about Venus in the 10th house is that despite the fact that they don't want to manage people, they will always end up with somebody as subordinate under them. And the problem with this is that many a times, despite being in the same designation as your immediate colleague, you might still end up being the mentor of that person. And the worst part about this is that that colleague who you were mentoring, as Venus in 10th house is you will see that colleague become better while you are mentoring them, and they would be promoted and moving ahead instead of you in terms of career ladder. This would frustrate you quite a lot. And this is how things really manifest. Because eventually the 10th house Venus knows that its work is not service, but it is business. It uses its workplace, its way of service to increase its reputation. But its karma is always the 7th house. Please remember that. And many a times, very later stage in their career, they realize that they have to transition towards business Many a times out of circumstantial cases we have seen that when Venus comes to the 10th house, the person didn't intend to start their business, but they got laid off, they took a separation from somewhere, they got gaslighted by bosses, they felt misunderstood, they felt devalued at their places of their service, and then they decided that I want to be solo or I want to do something on my own, and they actually succeed in that. So this is how it really manifests for them. It is very different from somebody who might have Saturn in the 10th house or Sun in the 10th house. Sun in the 10th house might take that person to an authority within the same corporate ladder. Saturn in the 10th house might give that person a very assertive authority at the workplace and they are kind of okay with it. Venus in the 10th house is like that it has a very strong elevated sense of justice. If somebody approaches them to ask for help, they would help them out of their way. Then they would see that they are devalued about their help, and then they would decide that I am better independent on my own. And this is very strongly happening whenever Venus comes to the 10th house. Interestingly, even though we see that their interest is initially not inclined towards relationship, but many a time a 10th house Venus person will end up doing, multiple relationships through the workplace. Many a times, even post-marriage, we have seen, especially if the 6th house is connected to the 10th, or they have a malefic placed in the 12th house also, these people end up having extended relationships beyond their own partner also. Now, this does not always suggest an extramarital affair. Please don't get me wrong that way. Many a times, a 10th house Venus person thinks that it is their sense of duty to treat everybody very equally. And it takes a very long time for them to realize that they need to not develop bias towards the special people around them, that they need not help everybody who is in need. But when they actually realize that, sometimes it's too late because their partner feels and accuses them of maltreating them. And their partner might think that they are actually having some sort of a relationship within their workplace, and they would misunderstand such a person. So this is extensively impacting their satisfaction from relationships. And that is why many a times I have seen that the Venus in 10th house person sort of leads a lonely life, sort of feels that even though with the big friend circle, even though they are cherished by so many people, even though that they have so much reputation within society, they still feel that their near dear close ones do not exactly understand them. This might seem like a curse on Shukracharya himself also, who is constantly misunderstood by his own pupils, the demons, the Daityas, who are constantly winning over heaven and then losing because of not following their guru properly. And yet, Shukracharya doesn't want to give up on them because Shukracharya feels that my karma, my 10th house, or rather my aim or objective of life is simply to guide others. And the sooner the 10th house Venus person realizes this, the happier they actually become. So Venus in 10th house comes with a mixed bag of responsibilities and a definitely wonderful materialistic pursuit placement in terms of spirituality as well, because they would advocate minimalism when it comes to viewing the life and the lens of materialism. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. Now let's come to Venus in the 11th house. Now this is a place where Venus actually feels extremely happy. It feels that it is here to show this entire world that such a person exists. It is here to prove a point to the entire world that I am different from others. The Venus in the 11th house always leads a life full of luxury and comforts in terms of the network that they create for themselves. It is a different matter altogether that they hate this very network which they themselves either create or circumstantially their destiny is to become part of, but at the same time they feel that they cannot live in social isolation either. They are always constantly trying to balance a lot of people incoming in their life. Venus in the 11th house is one placement where people naturally are attracted to you like a magnet, even more than Venus in first house as a placement. You will see that people come and exit your life in a very fast-paced fashion, and you take a lot of time to process it. until you get normalized by this chaos, and then you decide that, yeah, it is understandable that people are coming and going, people are intending, coming with an intention in your life, exiting after they have used or completed that intention, and you stop taking that personally altogether. You will also see that such people are definitely suited for business quite extensively. You will see that such people very much are the set of people that even if they are into service, even if their sixth house advocates that they are constricted to workplace, they end up generating multiple side incomes apart from their main source of income. Such a person does not see passion in a literal form. Such a person first studies whether something is feasible enough to be monetized, then they make that part their own passion. Otherwise, they will not devote their efforts into that direction at all. This person is like an explorer because they will seldom stick to one thing. And one of the biggest problems with the Venus in 11th house is their scattered focus all around. They are known to be very good strategists, but unfortunately, because they are so scattered, if they are not getting an instant gratification out of somewhere, if they are not getting their due diligent result according to them, then they sort of move away or keep on changing or finding alternative paradigms of doing things, and they keep on experimenting again and again. And sometimes a lot of experimentation leads to a lot of failures, but they never give up on that. That's another beautiful thing. And why do they not give up on that? Is it because they are good in terms of willpower? To a certain extent, yes. But the reality is that they are blessed in terms of a safety mechanism, either in terms of their parental wealth or in terms of they have some reassurance that keeps on reminding them that, yes, if this does not work out, I have a backup plan B ready for myself. So they don't fear in terms of that experimentation. These set of people usually end up providing a lot of resources to their children, and they also spoil their children very actively. It is very often seen that Venus in the 11th house has a traumatic childhood, or has a childhood where they felt that, I was never given the due resources which I deserved within my childhood. So I will make sure that I provide every single ounce of luxury to my child or my offspring who needs help in growing within their lives. And this they do as a PTSD about themselves, and they project this insecurity onto the child that, yes, I will do anything for you. You just name it and I will bring it for you. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. And that's a classic mistake that a Venus in 11th house always does. They will always not end up making their children or offspring learn the actual value of money, something that they should really refrain from. Another interesting thing about such people is that they have to be authentic to their partner. They are very concerned about their societal image overall. These are the set of people who are more happy about posting over social media and seeking validation about their happiness from the world around. They are definitely successful in doing that, but they have a very classic difference or a contrast in terms of their real life and their real life. And this is something a partner cannot easily endorse to. So they have to become vulnerable to somebody. They have to become vulnerable to their partners. They have to be their true authentic self, and they have to realize that they should not try to escape this authentic self, at least from their partner, even if they are making a fake impression on other people around in order to impress them. Now keep in mind, there is nothing wrong about it, because it is exactly this tendency that they use as a reinforcement to earn multiple sources of income. It is not necessary that a Venus in 11th house will always be a social media influencer, contrary to the expectation. It is true that a lot of social media influencers do have Venus in the 11th house, but the interesting side of it is, it really depends on the disposition of the Venus over here and other factors as well. Let's say if Venus is being driven by Saturn, these people might enter the artistic industry, but in a back form, or let's say by being an assistant director, let's say by being a photographer. They have a very good eye about what people want to see, and they would always do something that the people will advocate. Such people also become very excellent product managers because they always put forward the user's pain points exactly where it is required to be mapped towards. And such a person will also be extremely adept at astrology very indirectly because they have a very natural knack for speculation. But unfortunately, their speculation is not going to be mathematical. Their speculation might not always have a rationale or a reasoning behind it. They usually end up speculating and predicting things according to their gut instinct. And they trust their gut instinct like anything. They have very severe intuitions about why something is good or not. This could be in as small as form as something like, let's keep this painting on this particular wall. They are not able to explain why, but they know that it would look beautiful over there. And they know exactly that others will also find it aesthetically pleasing when the painting is put on that wall instead of somewhere else. So this gut instinct, this natural knack, you can say, is something that they are gifted with when Venus comes to the 11th house. They should be very, very careful about their obsessions and addictions as well. Because usually while seeking validation or while trying to network with other people, they try to emulate the personality of the other person in order to impress them. They know how to create that spark of relatability so that the other person is easily impressed by them. But while creating that spark of relatability, they end up not expressing their true self to the other person, right? So in order to do that, many a times they undergo social gatherings. Many other times you will see that such people advocate taking a lot of intoxications. These people really believe in group dynamics very often. They are like that person who does not belong to the group but still is existing over there. That is why I said this could be very excellent product managers who are constantly hanging out with engineers or who are constantly in sync with the design team. So they are interacting with people who are not directly related to their profession or their designation, but they are easily able to fake themselves in order to integrate in that social setting. Apart from that, you will also see these people actually doing this very same thing when it comes to their friend circles. They are really attracted to things that they themselves don't know. And they have a very huge respect for somebody who knows what they don't know. So they will seek that knowledge and they will try to integrate within those intellectual circles. And that is why a Venus in 11th house is not bad as a placement. Why? Because this person exactly knows where to approach, when to approach, how to approach, and at the same time, this is the person who has a hack for every single possibility. Why? Because you will see that such a person has a guy for anything. You tell them anything. I want to party today. Yeah, I have a person who can help you with that. I want to solve this bug that came into my programming pipeline. Yeah, I have a person who can help you out with. I want a referral. Yeah, I have a person who I met long back. I want to travel or I want to, prepare an itinerary for travel. Oh, I have a contact for that also. So these are the set of people who have a very wide network and they are like a spider within the web of that network. They are not necessarily very close to anybody. They are not necessarily attached to anybody, but they are pulling the strings somehow. And they are good enough in terms of relationships with everybody that if they ask for help, they will not be denied. But if they want to get too personal, then they will be denied. So they know how to set that boundary and be able to interact with one and everybody. They are very crafty. And this is something that their immediate closed relationships really know. People might see or view them as very covert narcissistic people who might play victim card, who might intentionally downplay themselves so that the other person feels intellectually superior to them. But at the end of the day, this manipulative tendency is what makes and sets this placement apart from others because they know how to get the work done, how to get their work done. They know how to make their life easier by making sure that the other person is working out, and therefore they become very excellent managers, and they transition to become excellent influencers and business people also. They know exactly where to be and how to exactly monetize something in a perfect fashion, end to end. So it is a placement that also is often characterized by imposter syndrome, as you will see in a lot of influencers, right? And apart from influencers, also in general, a Venus in 11th house will often feel that I am a jack of everything but master of none. But they slowly learn to transition this insecurity into their asset, and it becomes extremely powerful as well, because they exactly know how to navigate it in life in such a fashion that it would be put to good use, and then they would also make a network around it, and then they would sit at the center pulling the strings everywhere else. So this is how powerful Venus can apply when it comes to the 11th house. Another interesting thing about this Venus is that immediately when you pray to the Devi or you chant mantras related to Devi, you see instant results. And you will be very surprised by it. These are the set of people who would advocate in comments of a mantra chanting video, let's say a Lakshmi mantra chanting, that yeah, this worked for me. Why it worked for me? And this is something similar to when Venus goes to 2nd or 5th house also. Even sometimes 6th house, I will tell sometime later in a video why 6th house Venus is also extremely misunderstood. But these are the set of placements that really would advocate this. And this is one of the strongest ones for that, definitely. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. What happens when Venus comes to the 12th house? Now, this is also one of the most feared and misunderstood placement. Often we see that, a lot of videos you will talk about the fact that a Venus in 12th house will lead to extramarital affairs, would lead to multiple relationships. They prioritize physical pleasures within their life. And it is true also. I'm not denying that entirely. It is extremely true when Venus is afflicted over here or Venus is in alignment with a malefic. But honestly, you need to understand the context of why that happens. When Venus comes to the 12th house, initially this person craves relationship and sense of belonging very often. And the way they understand this relationship is by indulging into physical pleasures with the other person initially. While indulging in physical pleasures with the other person, simply because the 7th house is actually 8 houses away, they are not turned on simply to satisfy their sexual appetite. They are turned on in order to make the other person reveal their secrets to them. And once the other person reveals their secrets to them, they feel that they have established a sense of trust for the other person to be able to confide into them. And this is something that they see as a strengthened bond. The fact that somebody can come and confide in me, the fact that somebody chose me over hundreds of other people who were possibilities in their life to confide a secret makes me feel special. And this is what Venus in 12th house is all about. People actually feel healed by trauma dumping upon such person. These people will never indulge into a sexual relationship unless the other person has given away their cards to them. They are actually extremely sapiosexual also. These people do not prioritize something like of an instant hookup culture. These people actually have a very wide sense of spirituality contrary to your assumption. These people validate that the other person is authentic or not. This person will have strong intuitions and vision. This person will become extremely ambitious. And the biggest irony is that this person will earn more by losing. And by losing, I mean that they actually lose physical relationships also in their life. Many a times you would see that after an iteration of 2 to 3 wrong set of people, this person finally finds that one perfect match to whom they will stick forever. And trust me, after all those reiterations, they have already undergone a process of hit and trial or traumatic endings and beginnings that it is extremely hard for them to move on away from the person that they are finally deciding to commit to. And this person fears commitment like anything. Unlike the assumption that this person is actually a player in dating, they are extremely insecure inside because they have constantly been misused by the people around them. They have constantly been made to indulge into physical pleasures. They have constantly seen that indulging into physical pleasures is not translating into a relationship later on. And this ends up in a very traumatic fashion for them eventually. It is also very common for such people to have very proposal like fantasies, that despite the fact that, people might think that they prioritize sexual pleasures over everything, no, they're actually very downright romantic. And they want the other person to run behind them in order to seek commitment. You will see that this person is not easy to convince in order to commit in a relationship. This person always will try to escape when it comes to commitment. It takes a lot of authenticity and lot of persuasion for the other person in order to accommodate them into life. But trust me, once you have accommodated a 12th house Venus person in your life, they will make your life luxurious, comfortable, stable, and sometimes at their own expense, they will ensure that you don't feel any point of pain throughout your entire life now. Once they have decided that yes, this is the person worth fighting for, they will stand there all the time. It is true that such a person finds it very difficult to move on away from others. So you will see that a 12th house Venus person will always try to put some amount of effort to even pull back a hanging relationship to become stable again. These are the set of people who might not entirely break up in their relationships. They either might decide to still be friends, or they might decide to maturely end it before it becomes traumatic. And they are very practical in terms of that. And nobody wants to appreciate this practical side of theirs. They know when to stop so that the other person does not feel hurt. It is only when there is a consent also from the other side that they would actually, indulge into that. More importantly, once they have got the consent to, let's say, indulge into an extramarital affair also, let's say for example, the problem is that the aspect of the Venus from the 12th house to the 6th house will ensure that the other person will, go bedag, or will go unabashed, or will be harmless in terms of, let's say, litigations, or in terms of taking an accusation. Everybody in the society will blame the Venus in 12th house person conveniently, and circumstances will not favor this person. They will end up taking all the blame that was supposed to be shared with the other person who had also given the consent to them. You will also see that this person does not, love to work quite a lot. It does not mean that they get tired easily. It does to a certain extent. But it certainly does not mean that they are not passionate enough to work. They are a set of people who want to do something that can pay their bills. That's all. It makes them extremely ambitious. So they start accumulating wealth by spending more wealth. And this may sound weird, but they actually end up making more money when they are rolling the money around. This is something again similar to the 6th house Venus to a certain extent, except it manifests in a much better fashion for them. Because 12th house initially shows that they have a very deep interest to spend a lot of money. They might end up even getting addicted to a lot of things. They might end up feeling that I am spending money in order to cope stress. They might use expenses as an excuse, as a stress coping mechanism also many a times in their life. They will have very frequent zone out from their social settings also. These are a set of person who demand a lot of attention from others around them, but is just not ready to give the same amount of attention to others when it is required. They will ignore your texts all day for 2 days, a week, a month, and then suddenly they will come back into your life like nothing happened. This is a very basic characteristic of a Venus in 12th house person. For them, from their perspective, they would say that, I was lost in the path of life, or I was busy introspecting about my own life. I was zoned out. So please don't judge me about it. And many a times during this introspection, they end up losing genuine relationships also within their life. Venus does more charity compared to anybody else around. So they make a lot of money, not with the intent that they will spend this money only upon themselves. They only intend to spend this money, and therefore they are the set of people who donate a lot. And they do this without expectation. That's another very beautiful thing about it. Many a times, many people mistake them that they are not valuing money. That is not true. They are very monetarily driven. In fact, for them also, money is everything. Many a times they miss spirituality's essence by chasing money quite extensively. So unlike other placements around where there is a possibility of reaching the true decoded mechanism or meaning or essence of materialism, it is extremely difficult for a 12th house Venus to be able to reach that pinnacle. But the interesting part is that even the smallest of prayers a 12th house Venus person will give, or they would devote even their smallest of time towards spirituality, they would end up seeing a lot more stability in their life. They would end up seeing, lesser days of depression, lesser days of introspection, lesser days of overthinking. They are very anxious set of people. They cannot stay alone by themselves. Even if they are, desiring isolation, they are a type of person who wants somebody else sitting in the room beside them and leave them alone in their room. For them, this is a reassurance that yes, there is somebody else also sitting within my vicinity. Even though I am not interested to talk, I am just there to validate that, yeah, I am not alone wherever I am sitting. Another interesting side about this Venus is that they show a little bit of a lack of interest in having kids. For them, it is not about being selfish. For them, they simply feel that I have other priorities apart from having kids in general. They don't see kids as a burden in case they actually bear them later on, obviously. They ensure that the resources are being provided, but they will not make the kid the center stage of their life. That is what I'm trying to convey. For them, they have their own set of life. For them, they have their own set of pleasures, and they will continue pursuing that irrespective whether the kid comes into their life or not. They do not want to change themselves. It's like post-marriage, they want to still live the bachelor way around. This might piss off their relationship people a lot, but honestly, if somebody is indulging into a relationship with them, they honestly already knew what they are signing up for. So instead, if somebody is in a committed relationship with a Venus in 12th house, instead of complaining that they are seeking pleasures or they're not giving due attention, you should try to see the other side of that person and give an appreciation to it. Because a 12th house Venus person is very flexible. Once they see that you have an appreciation for their other side, which other peoples are not validating, they will ensure that they make positive changes within their personality, within their life to accommodate your interests also. And then you will establish a very wonderful mutual balance over here. This placement is again very highly misunderstood in terms of money making. And in case you have not done it yet, please like, share and subscribe. It means quite a lot. A lot of people will complain that such person might see extensive losses in their life from speculation related activity, might see a lot of financial losses in general within their life, or will not be able to multiply money or change jobs. That is all not true at all. In my experience, I have seen that a 12th house Venus has the power of adaptability. I have also seen that such a person does find success away from their home line on hometowns in general, and they eventually take a separation, and they will feel extremely elevated when they are self-reliant, because it is also one of their insecurities and they have to overcome it. As I mentioned earlier, that they hate to be isolated even though they desire isolation, ironically. But at the same time, once they overcome their insecurity, they would make quite a lot of money and they would spend all this money. So the net balance over here kind of becomes zero. So that is what they should be very wary about. They should not overindulge into pleasures. They should always have a realistic limit set about what sort of risk they are going to take. They should not escape out of execution. They are people who are very focused only on visioning things. But once you decide to embrace Saturn in your life, irrespective wherever it is being placed in the chart, understand the themes of Saturn, then you will be able to see the core essence of the Venus in the 12th house. By understanding your Saturn, by satisfying your Saturn, you will reach a very large pinnacle of potential. Unfortunately, a 12th house Venus has more haters compared to lovers in general. You will see that they are not bothered about their haters at all, but unfortunately they do attract quite a lot of misunderstandings from people around them, to the extent that they finally stop correcting them, they stop arguing with them, and they start prioritizing their own mind peace. This is unlike the 6th house Venus, which will prefer to indulge into argumentation and take a stand for itself. For them, justice or the elevated sense of justice comes to the fact or to the extent that they believe strongly that it is up to the other person to change their perspective. It is not my duty to change their perspective. I will only tell them once about it, and if they have not understood, I will move on. They will not preach or teach in general. They will only focus upon themselves, and they will tell their experiences to others. If somebody is getting taught by those experiences, they appreciate that. If not, they just move on away from it. They don't bother to coming back again. A 12th house Venus finds loyalty after a lot of iterations, and they should never give up upon that hope. In fact, many a times I have seen that they are the set of people who become so broad-minded, or they actually are able to broaden their horizons or perspectives so nicely that they end up going into a foreign land or marrying somebody out of their community as well. Which is again a wonderful thing, to be very frank, because this is the placement that knows how to appreciate different cultures and accommodate them in order to see elevation in life, which is the true sign of a philanthropist. So that is the overall summary for the 12th house Venus from my side.